when I found out I was pregnant. The childhood sweetheart I had been on and off with for 10 years finally kicked me to the curb. He pulled away cleanly and quickly, and almost immediately announced his engagement to someone else. I became the laughingstock of our entire circle, and during those most unbearable days, the only person who stayed by my side was Diego. Everyone whispered, "If Olivia's the simp, then Diego's the wolf warrior. He's even volunteering to raise someone else's kid." Classic story, male lead dumps the supporting girl, and the second male lead swoops in to save her. Diego ignored all the gossip, just as he'd always quietly protected me. When I finally said yes to his proposal, that tall, handsome man had red eyes for the first time. "Olivia, I'll make sure you're happy," he said, voice trembling. But on our wedding day, I suddenly woke up 7 years later. Diego was 35 now. His tone cold, his face filled with impatience. "Say it, what will it take for you to agree to the divorce?" Chapter 1. I do. I answered automatically, without thinking, just following the officiant's cue. It took several seconds before I realized something was wrong. There were no cheers, no guests, and Diego didn't respond. The man who, only a moment ago, had been looking at me with tearful eyes, now stared back at me with nothing but coldness. When he heard my answer, his tightly furrowed brows relaxed slightly. "Since you agree, divorce?" I blinked, stunned. "Why?" Silence fell for a few seconds. Diego's voice was low, heavy. "Olivia, can you please stop going back and forth? There's no point dragging this out. Is there? Do you have to make it ugly before you're satisfied?" That face, once gentle and patient, was now full of irritation, his voice so distant. It didn't sound like him at all. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Before we married, Diego had proposed to me 4 times. I refused him the first 3. I was too scared he'd one day break my heart. 2. But he had kept saying, "Olivia, I'll never leave you. I'll spend my whole life clinging to you. Please, don't throw me away. Give me a chance, okay?" He even tattooed a red mole over his heart. For me. Now, staring at him, I couldn't reconcile the man before me with the one I remembered. Diego sighed impatiently and tossed a stack of papers onto the table. "Think it over and contact me when you're ready. I'll give you 1 month at most. After that, I'll take it to court." Chapter 2. I lowered my head sluggishly. The bold black letters on the cover were blinding. Divorce agreement. Diego had already signed it. His familiar handwriting had been right in front of me just a minute ago. He knew I loved traditional Chinese weddings, so he had handwritten our engagement contract, and now he had signed this sheet of white paper. I pinched myself. It hurt, but I didn't wake up from this nightmare. The sharp edge of the paper cut my finger, and the blood stained the divorce papers. It looked just like the red ribbon that had tied Diego and me together during the wedding. My phone buzzed, snapping me out of my daze. The screen showed the year, 2025, 7 years after my wedding with Diego. "Cameron, Mr. Diego just drove toward Bin Park. Seems like he's heading to the west side of the city." I scrolled up through the messages. Every single one documented Diego's movements, and photos of him with the woman who lived in the west part of town. The chat logs revealed I had hired this private investigator 3 months ago. Just a week ago, I'd asked him to dig deeper into that woman's background. I had planned to meet her for a confrontation. Lisa, 27, from Wenzhou, started as an intern at Mr. Diego's company 3 years ago, later promoted to his assistant. Contact info. But Miss Olivia, a direct conversation with her might not be the best idea right now. The investigator had probably seen too many dramatic catfights and was trying to advise caution. I never did make that call. My fingers just kept scrolling through those affectionate photos, zooming in on every detail. My eyes burned, and the tears blurred the screen. Before I could dial her number, hers appeared on the screen first. "You sure took your time answering." Lisa's voice was light, smug. "You wanted to meet me so badly, didn't you?" Chapter 3. The moment I saw Lisa, I froze. My steps felt impossibly heavy. She looked even more like me in person than she did in the photos, only younger. She had chosen the cafe, and it was clear she was a regular. A waiter walked over quickly. "Back again? The usual?" "Make it milk this time." Lisa raised her brow. I'm pregnant. Doctor says I need to cut back on caffeine. Seeing the blood drain from my knuckles, she acted as if she just realized something. Oh, sorry. Didn't mean to hit a sore spot. I'm just being honest. What man doesn't dream of having his own child? If you can't give him that, why shouldn't someone else be allowed to? I stared blankly at her belly. My palm throbbed in pain. 7 years ago, I lost my first child. The miscarriage and the illness that followed left me with a diagnosis. It would be very hard to get pregnant again. Diego never said it out loud, but I knew he really wanted kids. So I secretly started seeing doctors, taking medication. My mother cried bitterly. She wouldn't even drink cold medicine as a child. The treatments were awful. I'd vomit even as I forced the pills down. They tasted terrible, but I swallowed every one. I just wanted a child with Diego. Everyone said he had the daughter's fate, that he'd be an amazing dad. But 7 years had gone by, and we still had no child. Chapter 4. Watching Lisa's cautious movements, I finally understood why Diego had been so desperate. She was pregnant, and in 2 months, her belly would start to show. He didn't want her to carry a child without a proper title. Sensing my gaze, Lisa placed a hand gently on her still flat stomach. Diego must have mentioned it to you several times already. As for the property division, I have no objections. Split it however it should be split. You two have been together for so long. You don't really want things to end in an ugly mess, do you? Her tone was identical to Diego's. I could almost picture them discussing me behind my back. How many times they must have resented me for clinging on, refusing to let go. If I don't sign the divorce papers, you can't take my place. Are you afraid people will call your baby illegitimate? Lisa's expression didn't change. Her eyes were full of contempt. You think I'm dirty, manipulative? You two have no love left, and you still insist on holding him back. Doesn't that disgust you? I thought, perhaps at 35, after 7 years of marriage, I'd become weak, too weak even to ask for the truth over the phone. I straightened up, but as soon as I lifted the cup of hot coffee, a sharp pain tore through my abdomen. I nearly fainted, barely managing to steady myself by gripping the table. Lisa grabbed her bag, staring at me with alarm. If anything happens to this child, Diego will never forgive you. I bit back the pain, clutching the table's edge. Diego forbade you from meeting me, didn't he? If he finds out you tried to pressure me into divorce behind his back. Her expression shifted, and she muttered coldly, "Stop pretending." Chapter 5. When I got home, I collapsed almost instantly. By the time I woke up, it was already the next day. Faint light seeped through the curtains. The floor was cold, the hallway in disarray. Diego hadn't come back. I steadied myself against the wall, dragging my exhausted body toward the medicine cabinet in search of painkillers. When I opened it, not a single bottle of pain medication was there, only neatly arranged vitamins and rows of hangover pills from different brands. On every label were dense notes in my handwriting, notes recording when Diego should take each supplement, and which brand of hangover remedy worked best in certain situations. At the bottom lay a small notebook. February 27th, I was picky with my food today. Threw away the fruit from my lunchbox. Punishment, 2 tablets of vitamin C. March 6th, drank too much at a business dinner and threw up. Hugged me all the way home, mumbling nonsense. Punishment, no alcohol. Drink pig stomach soup for 3 days. March 13th, forgot to bring hangover pills again. The earlier entries were frequent, but as I flipped further, they grew fewer and fewer, until the last page was completely blank. I ran my fingers over the damp, curled paper, unable to collect myself for a long while. The phone vibrated. A message from my mother. "Daughter, it's been so long since you two came home. Your father and I miss you. Mid-Autumn Festival is coming. You'll come back with Diego this time, won't you?" I wiped my eyes and opened the chat window with Diego. A wall of green message bubbles, met with only a few sparse replies. "Found this tie while shopping. It suits you. This plant looks like a giraffe. Doesn't it remind you of the one we saw on the savannah? Heard your favorite song again today. It's been so long. It's raining. Don't forget to wear more layers. I packed a scarf in your suitcase. Made fish soup and your favorite tofu. Diego, business trip, last minute. Every shared moment had turned into a monologue. Even his replies were perfunctory, detached. The last message I sent was 2 months ago. A simple reminder. Don't forget. You promised my parents we'd visit tomorrow. He still hadn't replied. Chapter 6. I called him, and it wasn't until the third attempt that Diego finally picked up. What is it? Mid-Autumn Festival is coming. My parents hope we can go back for a visit. There was a long silence on the other end. Then Diego sighed, impatiently, almost irritably. My heart sank. Before we married, Diego had worried that I would get homesick. To reassure my parents, he promised that we would visit them for every holiday, at least once every 2 months. But now, it had been over half a year since we last went home together. We'll see, he said, just as he was about to hang up. I spoke quickly. You promised me. On the day of the visit, Diego did come back. He looked at me coldly as I sat down in the passenger seat. Olivia, this will be the last time. They'll find out about us sooner or later. I've already given you enough time. Outside the window, the scenery sped by, and the small bell hanging from the rearview mirror jingled brightly, cheerful, yet unbearably noisy. Diego often had social engagements, and he liked playing soft music in the car to unwind. That's why the accessories I chose for him had always been quiet. His favorite used to be a small calming sachet I'd hand-embroidered, but now, it had been replaced by cold, clattering metal trinkets. As I stared at the tangled chains, bitterness welled up in my throat. Why did you lie to me? Why say you were on a business trip, when you were in another city lighting fireworks for someone else? Why promise to do 100 things together, when the middle pages of our journal turned into emptiness? Why? One moment, swear eternal love in a proposal, and the next, give all that romance to another woman? I couldn't understand. Diego slammed the brakes suddenly. The look in his eyes was like ice. Olivia, so you do care about deceit and betrayal after all? Chapter 7. What do you mean? Diego's knuckles turned white as he gripped the steering wheel. Were you ever completely honest with me? I froze for a few seconds, about to ask what he meant, but a sharp pain twisted through my stomach. I stumbled out of the car and ran toward the service area restroom. But when I finally vomited, it wasn't bile, it was blood. The woman in the mirror looked ghostly pale, her cheeks sunken. No amount of makeup or red lipstick could hide the sickly look on her face. I wiped the cold sweat from my forehead, clutching my aching stomach, and slowly made my way back to the car. I knocked on the window. Can we turn around later and stop by the hose? You should go back on your own today. Diego was staring at his phone, brows furrowed. Something came up at the company. I have to deal with it right now. I glanced at the screen. The name flashing on the chat interface was Lisa. Diego. I can't drive back alone. I'm not feel. The car window rose abruptly, cutting off my voice. I took 2 steps forward after him, and suddenly the world spun violently. A metallic taste surged up my throat. My stomach cramped in waves, and I curled up on the ground. Then everything went dark. Chapter 8. When I woke up, the sharp smell of disinfectant filled the air. After I collapsed at the service area, a kind stranger had taken me to the nearest hospital. My mother had called more than 10 times in a panic. Sweetheart, didn't you say you'd be here by 7? Is there traffic on the way? Mom, don't worry. I blinked through the sting in my eyes. Something urgent came up at Diego's company. We had to go back suddenly. We probably won't make it home for now. As long as you're okay. My mother sighed in relief. Your father and I understand how busy you both are. It's fine, just come back for the new year. Listening to her rambling voice made my nose sting even more. In my last relationship, I'd been young, reckless, determined to love without turning back. My parents had worried themselves sick over me. Even when Diego started pursuing me later, they couldn't bring themselves to trust him right away. It wasn't until after my miscarriage, when Diego stayed by my side day and night, knocked on closed doors and never gave up, that my parents were finally moved by his persistence. They allowed him into my life. At the wedding, my mother cried so much her eyes were swollen. My father's eyes were red when he placed my hand into Diego's. You can rest assured, sir, ma'am, I'll make Olivia happy for the rest of her life. No one expected that 7 years later, this was where we'd end up. After reassuring my mother, I hung up the call and went to collect my report. When I opened it, my hand froze. The paper crumpled between my fingers, the joints turning white. Stage 4 stomach cancer. Chapter 9. I couldn't remember how long I had walked, only that I craved the sharp cold wind brushing against my face. As if it could sober my thoughts. When I got home, I was surprised to see a familiar figure. The moment he saw me, Diego shot up from the sofa and gripped my arm tightly. "Have you made enough of a scene?" I frowned at him. He threw a stack of photos onto the table. I'd seen every single one of them on my phone already. "Olivia, what exactly do you want? You hired someone to follow her, take pictures, and even try to harm her. Isn't this all just to force me to give in? If you've got a problem, take it out on me." Lisa had clearly panicked that I might reveal. She was the one who arranged the meeting, so she dropped a bombshell first. She had known about the secret photos all along. No wonder those angles made everything look so intimate. I didn't have the energy to argue. All I wanted was to lie down and sleep. But Diego yanked me back roughly. His eyes were bloodshot with rage. As if I were some kind of irredeemable criminal. Pain surged through me. I grabbed the cabinet for balance and whispered, "Lisa's methods are impressive." Diego flinched at my smile, and his grip on my shoulder nearly crushed the bone. "Olivia, you don't have the right to look down on her like that. Of course, people like you, always perched on a pedestal, never stop to think that maybe you're the problem. That look on your face, disgusting, just like your parents." He spat the words through gritted teeth. His expression contorted. I froze for a long moment, then suddenly straightened and slapped him hard across the face. His head tilted into the shadows. "Don't talk about my parents," I shouted, trembling from the pain. "Don't talk about them? Or do you just think I'm not worthy to?" Diego suddenly sneered, his face red from the slap. He caught my hand before I could hit him again. "This whole time, is this how you've always thought of me, Olivia?" Chapter 10. I stared at Diego blankly, not understanding why he would say something like that. "My parents never." I heard everything back at the hospital. "Your parents never liked me, did they? They thought someone like me could never make you happy. They pitied you for marrying me." Hospital? A vague memory surfaced. After I lost our first child and was hospitalized, Diego stayed by my side constantly during that time, and I slowly began to accept him. My parents saw that I had stopped resisting his affection, realized I was probably ready to move on, but they still had concerns. "Sweetheart, we know you're hurting. Maybe a new relationship can help you heal, but if you haven't let go of the past, it's not fair to Diego." They hesitated. "Also, Diego is still too young. We believe he has potential. But marriage isn't just about love. We want you to be happy, not pressured into a choice because of current pain." At that time, Diego was young, poor, and deeply in love with me. I knew what my parents feared. They were scared I would suffer again, that I'd end up in another dead end. So I promised them, "Don't worry, Mom and Dad, no one will ever love me more than Diego." Before the wedding, as a gesture of support, they gave him a huge investment to help him start his business. But in his eyes, that was nothing more than arrogant charity. "Admit it, Olivia, you're just like them. Even after being with me, you still can't forget your ex. Even the night before our wedding, you still couldn't resist meeting him again." Diego stepped closer, his grip nearly crushing my wrist. "The night before our wedding, I did meet my childhood sweetheart once. He'd gotten drunk, climbed over the fence into our yard." Suddenly nostalgic for the past. "Olivia, I know you didn't marry Diego willingly. As long as you don't demand marriage from me, we can keep things the way they were. I don't mind." I slapped him across the face. "You hit me?" I slapped him again even harder, grabbed a wine bottle from the table and pointed it at him. "If I was once pathetic for being entangled with you, then fine, shame on me. But let me make this clear. I married Diego willingly. If you keep insulting him, I won't mind spending a night in jail." He looked at me and suddenly laughed. "Olivia, you haven't changed at all. Still clinging to your fantasy of love. Diego isn't like you. You don't even deserve to be compared to him. It's all the same. Olivia, you're just too naive. Chapter 11. The pain pierced deep into my bones, stealing my voice. I swallowed the metallic taste of blood and looked up at Diego. Is that really what you think of me? Diego's words were knives, each one driven straight into my heart. Olivia, do you think that because I once chased after you like a pathetic dog, I deserve to be your second choice? That because I loved you too much, I should live in the shadow of your precious first love, picking up the scraps he left behind, thanking you for every crumb you throw my way? No matter what I do, I'll never be good enough compared to the man who abandoned you. People can be pathetic sometimes, you included. He slammed the door and left, the sound echoing through the empty darkness. The seed of doubt he'd planted long ago had now grown into a towering tree. There was no longer room for me to explain anything. Chapter 12. Before I was hospitalized, I went to a temple, step by step. I climbed to the top of the mountain to leave behind my final wish. I wished for my parents to stay healthy, and for myself to hold on a little longer, so that my goodbye wouldn't come too suddenly. After lighting the incense, a young monk approached me. You've come again, he said gently. Will you visit the marriage tree today as well? I froze for a moment. Then I remembered. Yes, I had once tied my wish to that tree. After breaking up with my childhood sweetheart, I had come here to untie the old charm I'd hung there years ago. The branch was high, and I had to stand on my toes to reach it. I lost my balance, and the charm, engraved with "Grow Old Together," slipped from my fingers, but it didn't fall to the ground. It landed perfectly in the hands of Diego, who had secretly followed me up the mountain. He looked flustered, his voice trembling. I'm sorry, Olivia. I just didn't want you to be alone. I stared at the charm resting in his palm. At that moment, I truly believed it was fate, a sign from the gods, that no matter how far I fell, Diego would always catch me, just as he had done silently for the past 10 years. So I took his hand. Let's tie it back on. He fumbled clumsily with the red string, and I couldn't help but laugh and pinch him. Tie it higher. The higher it is, the easier for the gods to see it. Don't you want them to bless us with a lifetime together? Diego froze for a moment. Then his eyes reddened. He looked so awkward, fumbling until he pricked his own finger. That day, we became a couple. I found myself walking toward the marriage tree again. The old tree was now completely covered with charms. Most people had begun using a new one nearby. 7 years had passed. The charm we tied together had faded and weathered. I raised my hand to touch it, but through the branches, I saw a familiar figure. Diego was standing beneath the new tree, his arms around Lisa. Can you reach it? A little higher. Lisa giggled. I want ours tied to the very top. The rope on the old charm was rotten. I tugged lightly, and it fell to the ground. Diego's name had faded completely, leaving only one word visible: Olivia. The cruel persistence of coincidence. I picked up the charm, turned around, and walked away. Then I called Diego. I've made up my mind. Let's get divorced. He sounded startled, but there was relief in his voice. All right. When? Tomorrow. Chapter 13. The next day. I didn't make it to meet Diego as planned. The pain that struck me in the middle of the night was unbearable. Before losing consciousness again, I managed to dial 120. When I woke up after emergency treatment, I saw dozens of missed calls from Diego. Olivia, what the hell do you want from me? His voice was furious. You keep changing your mind. Are you making a fool out of me? My throat was dry and raw, the taste of iron thick in my mouth. Don't move right now. Just lie still. A nurse's voice said nearby. I'll get you some water. At that sound, Diego's rant stopped abruptly. After a pause, his voice came back, calmer. Where are you now? Less than 30 minutes later, he arrived. He frowned slightly as he stood beside my hospital bed. Why are you here? I looked at him calmly and told the truth. Cancer. Diego froze. It took several seconds for my words to register, and disbelief flickered across his face, but only for an instant. Then disbelief turned to disdain. Olivia, this trick won't work. I think I've made myself clear. There's no future between us. Did you bring a pen and paper? I extended my hand. No need to wait. I'll sign it now. When I signed my name without hesitation, Diego looked momentarily stunned. It wasn't until he held the signed divorce papers in his hands that his expression finally softened a little. See? Wouldn't it have been easier like this from the start? I tried to talk nicely before. I never wanted things to get this ugly. I was exhausted and wanted nothing more than to sleep. I turned my head away, giving no reply. Diego held the agreement and started to leave, but suddenly stopped in his tracks. He turned back. His voice cracked slightly, tinged with something almost desperate. Did you ever truly love me, Olivia? Even for a moment? Realizing how pitiful that sounded, he quickly changed his words. Olivia, have you ever regretted it? I looked at him. He felt so unfamiliar, utterly foreign. What about you? I asked softly instead. Do you regret being with Lisa? Diego's lips trembled, but he didn't say a word. Chapter 14. The day we went to the Civil Affairs Bureau. I received a pain-suppressing injection before leaving the hospital. When I got out of the car, my legs gave way slightly. Diego instinctively reached out to steady me. The edge of my sleeve lifted, revealing the bruised puncture marks on my arm. He froze for a second, as if suddenly realizing how thin and fragile I'd become. What happened to you? I pulled my hand back and smiled faintly. Just some glucose through the fore. It left a mark. That's all. Diego had already made the appointment. Everything went smoothly, quick, efficient, emotionless. Afterward, I returned to the hospital and fell into a long, long dream. In it, I was back before all of this. On our wedding day, Diego had been so afraid I'd regret it. Yet he didn't want to trap me. He asked me over and over if I truly wanted to marry him. If you have even the slightest hesitation, he'd said, I'll cancel everything. I just want you to have no doubts. When I woke up, my pillow was soaked with tears. On the hospital TV, Diego was announcing his engagement to Lisa. Lisa was crying with joy, her tears glistening under the lights, just like the day Diego knelt before me, sliding the diamond ring onto my finger, with that same gentle, devout smile. At some point, I could no longer tell day from night. The machines around me screamed in chaos. Footsteps rushed toward my bed, then stopped. The patient has no vital signs. Please accept our condolences. Olivia, she's dead? Why did she lie to me? All sensations began to fade away. The pain, the suffocation. Suddenly, all of it disappeared. My consciousness drifted, weightless, toward a distant light. So this is how my life ends. Chapter 15. When I opened my eyes again, I realized I had returned to 7 years ago. My parents told me that I had fainted during the ring exchange at the wedding. I was unconscious for an entire week, long enough to terrify Diego. I turned my head dully and saw Diego rushing into the hospital room. The doctors couldn't find anything wrong with me, and no matter what they did, I wouldn't wake up. Desperate, Diego searched for help everywhere, consulting specialists, comforting my parents, and staying awake for several nights in a row. Olivia, you're awake. He choked out the words, collapsing by my bedside and gripping my hand tightly. His face was covered with stubble, his hair disheveled, his eyes bloodshot. He looked exhausted to the point of breaking, thinking about the Diego from 7 years later, the one who had turned into someone cold and cruel. A rush of conflicting emotions filled my heart. What do you want to eat? I'll make it for you. I shook my head, but Diego held me tighter. No. His voice trembled with lingering fear. The doctor said it might have been hypoglycemia. It's all because of that damn wedding dress. The design was ridiculous. If you hadn't tried so hard to fit into it, you wouldn't have passed out. Please, just eat something, okay? Do it for me. His grip around me was almost suffocating. Before I could answer, he continued talking to himself softly. Vegetable and shrimp congee. You've always loved the way I make it. Eat a little, please? Chapter 16. When Diego came back with the porridge, a blister had formed on the back of his hand from the heat, but he didn't seem to notice. He simply blew on each spoonful to cool it down, and fed it to me carefully. Olivia. I was so scared, he said quietly. It was the most important moment of our lives. And suddenly, you just stopped responding. I never got to say I do, because I lost all strength. The ring I had prepared for Diego slipped from my hand. There were too many guests, everything happened so fast. Worried about me, Diego hadn't gone to look for it right away. When he later returned to the venue, he found that the ring had rolled all the way into a drain outside. He stood there for a long time, unable to understand how it had rolled so far. How could something meant to symbolize my love end up in such a dirty place? Maybe it got stuck on someone's shoe and was carried away, he said. But Olivia, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was fate, that it happened for a reason, like a warning that I needed to treat you better. But you woke up. He smiled faintly. That must mean I passed the test. We'll forget about that wedding dress. I'll order a new one, tailored perfectly to your body. You never need to change yourself for anything or anyone. His eyes burned with sincerity. But I stayed silent for a long moment and didn't nod. Diego, I finally said. Do you remember that mystery game we played together? Chapter 17. That was our first date. We picked a random emotional script, not realizing it had a tragic ending. Near the end, the DM asked everyone, if you knew the ending beforehand, would you still choose to be with him or her? Most people stayed silent. I thought for a long time before I answered. Yes, broken things are normal in life, as long as it's not a matter of principle. The characters in that story didn't end well, but their love remained dignified. The beauty of their time together was enough to make them choose each other again, even knowing it would all fall apart. Back then, I never imagined that someone, who once offered me his heart over and over again, would eventually become so cruel, so unrecognizable, that now, when I look at him, I can't stop trembling. Diego was still in his most passionate stage, but I could no longer go back. Diego, I said softly, let's break up. Chapter 18. Diego was stunned for a long moment before he reacted. Break up? A flash of disbelief crossed his eyes. He stood up almost instantly, but then realized he was gripping my hand too tightly and quickly let go. Afraid he had hurt me. Outside the hospital room, Diego looked defeated. He asked the doctor, my wife, is there anything else wrong with her? She fainted for so long, didn't the tests find anything? Could the dieting have affected her hormones? She just woke up, maybe she's still confused. Some mood swings would be normal. Without any firm answers from the doctor, Diego convinced himself. He took my words about breaking up as something I said in a confused, emotional state, so he kept showing up every day to take care of me. Olivia, I'm not in a rush. Take your time to think. Take your time to recover. I'll wait for you, I told you. I'll always be by your side. Even if you don't want me, I'll still cling to you. You can't get rid of me. Diego had always been patient. He did, after all, chase me for 10 years. He was attentive, gentle, and thorough. Even the patient in the next bed envied me. Your husband really loves you. Not like mine, he only came to visit once. I shook my head. We're not like that. Diego had just come back from washing some fruit. When he heard me say that, the apple in his hand dropped and rolled several times on the floor. Even the other patient looked awkward for him, but Diego simply turned and washed another apple, then sat by my bed and carved it into the shape of a little bunny I liked. He wasn't embarrassed at all. Instead, he smiled at the other patient. She's right, I'm still chasing her, but I'll wait until she says yes. Everyone else thought I was being dramatic. Even my parents were confused and concerned. While Diego wasn't around, they gently urged me, sweetheart, Diego has been with you for so long. We've seen how sincere he is. We didn't agree at first, but it was you who insisted on being with him. Now that everything seems perfect, why suddenly change your mind? Besides, Diego's been under so much pressure to be with you. If you call things off like this, how is he supposed to face everyone on his side? Chapter 19. To others, Diego looked like the perfect second male lead in a redemption arc. He was the one who pulled me out of that deep, suffocating past relationship, comforted me, stood by me, and loved me unconditionally. Everyone said, "No one will ever love you more than Diego does." And honestly, I once believed that too. But what if he's just another kind of trap? My parents looked into my trembling eyes, wanting to ask more. But in the end, they said nothing. They knew that once I made up my mind, it was hard to change it. I had to crash headfirst into the wall, bleed, and reach the point of no return. Only then would I finally let go. I rejected the psychological counseling Diego arranged for me and got discharged early. The room felt familiar, the decor, the layout. His little blue pig apron still hung in the kitchen. Our cartoon portrait was still on the wall. My favorite snacks and drinks were neatly placed in front of the beanbag. Every detail reminded me of the past. But it all felt so distant now. I shook my head, cleared my mind, and started packing. The keypad lock chimed. The door was pushed open suddenly from the outside. Diego stood at the threshold, pale, staring at the open suitcase spread across the floor. Chapter 20. I ignored the pain in his eyes and kept packing. "Olivia, why did you get discharged so suddenly?" "I'm fine now." "Then why didn't you answer my calls?" "You should have at least told me." "Diego." I turned to him. "I told you a week ago, we've already broken up." Diego looked like he had run all the way home. His chest was heaving as he caught his breath. He looked at me for a long moment, then tried to control his temper and reached for my hand. "I know you're feeling down lately. Eat something sweet, it'll help increase dopamine. Might lift your mood a little." He placed a cake box on the table, cut it, and handed me a slice. It was from my favorite cake shop. They don't have a branch in this city, and the cakes are limited edition, very hard to get. Every time I ate one, it used to make me really happy. But now, I looked away coldly. "I don't want it. And Diego, don't do this again. Did you even forget what today is?" Diego paused. Of course I hadn't. Today was our relationship anniversary. Ever since we got together, Diego celebrated every single occasion, each with a different gift. For our anniversary, he always went out of town to buy this cake himself. Even flew back just to surprise me. "It doesn't matter anymore." "Doesn't matter?" Diego suddenly laughed. His eyes turned red. "Olivia, how can you be so heartless? When you're happy, you're with me, smiling sweetly. And when you're unhappy, you cut me off coldly, just like that? You treat my feelings like they're nothing. All these years, what have I meant to you? Wasn't I good enough? Or, are you still thinking about the one who left you behind?" Chapter 21. Really? Is it truly like Diego said, that I trampled on his sincere feelings? That I never loved him at all? If I never loved him, then why does it hurt so much to see him with someone else? I slowly stood up and met Diego's bloodshot eyes. "And you? What am I to you? Is it love, or obsession? You've given so much, can you even see yourself clearly anymore? Do you love me because you truly want to be with me? Or are you just unwilling to let go of the decade you invested?" I pronounced each word with weight. "It's been so long, Diego. Can you still tell the difference?" Chapter 22. I moved out of the house and unilaterally called off the wedding with Diego. Pulling away wasn't as easy as I thought. It came with withdrawal symptoms. When I scrolled through social media, Diego's posts were always the first to appear. Passing a store, I would stop at the sight of a tie, only to realize that color would have looked great on Diego. Cooking too much by accident. Automatically ordering a meal for two. Forgetting to update my default delivery address when shopping. Everything reminded me that I was forcing someone out of my life. We barely contacted each other after that. The last message in our chat stayed on the night I moved. As I rolled my suitcase downstairs, Diego, who had been standing there in a daze, suddenly sent me a message. "It's late. Let me drive you." Yeah, that was the Diego I knew. No matter how ugly our fights got, he would always be the one to back down first. I relied on that love too much. So much that even after the heartbreak 7 years later, I still refused to let go. That night, I didn't wait for him. I just watched from the car's rearview mirror, as his figure slowly shrank in the distance, to keep my mind from spiraling into memories. I threw myself into work. One colleague couldn't stand it and dragged me to leave early for a team dinner. You're working way too hard. Is money really worth dying for? She joked. Truth is, I do value my health. After returning, I even booked a full-body checkup, especially focused on my stomach. Thankfully, everything was still early stage. Aside from a little hypoglycemia, I was relatively healthy. But sometimes, when I got too busy, I forgot to eat breakfast. One time, I crouched down and then stood up too quickly. Everything went black. A coworker reached out to steady me. But the next second, I fell into a familiar embrace. The scent of a person is hard to forget. My male colleague looked shocked at the man who suddenly appeared. This is... Diego smoothly pulled a chocolate from his pocket, unwrapped it, and offered it to me. I'm Olivia's friend, he said, voice rough. Once I was standing firmly again, he quietly let go. I'll give you guys a ride. Before I could decline, my clueless colleague cheerfully hopped in the car. Perfect. It's so hard to get a taxi right now. Hee hee. Lucky me. Seeing her innocent reaction, Diego let out a small sigh of relief. After the dinner, Diego was still waiting by the entrance. My other colleagues made teasing comments, formed pairs and coincidentally left me behind. They all exchanged knowing glances as I got into Diego's car. Truthfully, I did have something to ask him. Are you following me? When he brought me earlier, he hadn't even asked for the address, he just navigated straight to the destination. Olivia, I've been thinking a lot these past few days, Diego said. You know how I am, I dwell on every word you say. I can't change that. Maybe it's just a habit now. There's no doubt that I love you. If you think I'm chasing you out of confusion, then you're wrong. I'll resolve every concern you have. I'll prove it to you. Let's start over, even if it's just as friends. Chapter 23. The car was silent for a long while. I looked at Diego seriously and rejected him. When I said I wanted to break up, I meant it. Diego, stop wasting your time on me. There's no future for us. But Diego didn't give up. He claimed to just be a friend, yet quietly stayed by my side. Just like before, every day at lunchtime, he delivered perfectly balanced meals to my office. I told the front desk to stop accepting them. The necklace I paused to glance at in a store would show up in the delivery locker the same day. I'd throw it away without opening it. Hit movies, newly released snacks, new designs at my favorite nail salon, anything I'd once been interested in. Diego would send it all my way, even though the outcome was always the same. He didn't seem to care. He still showed up to drive me to and from work. If I didn't get in the car, he followed behind. If I switched to the subway, he squeezed into the rush hour crowd, using his arms to carve out a small, safe space around me. It was once these attentive, almost obsessive details that slowly drew me in, but now, they only made me feel exhausted. I applied for a job transfer. The day before I left, I staged a decoy, pretended I was going home to visit my parents. At the first light of dawn, I quietly rolled my suitcase out the back door. But before I even boarded the flight, my parents called. Diego seems to have figured it out. He drove off in a hurry. He's probably chasing after you. A sense of unease crept up my spine. Sure enough, the next second, a call came in from an unfamiliar number. I immediately blocked it and rushed to check in. Even after landing, another call from my parents came in. Sweetheart, something's happened. Diego was driving too fast. He's been in a car accident. Chapter 24. That was the last time I saw Diego. He lay pale in the hospital bed. When he saw me, he hurried to pull the blanket over his injury. My parents told me that Diego had broken his leg. They didn't know what had happened between us. But since it hadn't been long since the breakup, and it was me who initiated it, they felt a bit guilty toward Diego. They hoped that no matter what had happened, I could at least go visit him. Olivia, you came. Diego covered his injured leg and tried to sit up to peel me an apple. I cut him off coldly. Diego, if I were the kind of person who'd be moved by pity, I would have said yes to you a long time ago. What you're doing now is only making things harder for me. From now on, I don't want to see you again. And I don't want you bothering my parents either. The accident had been entirely Diego's fault. He ran a red light while chasing me, crashed into another car, and nearly drove off a bridge. Thankfully, the pedestrian he hit wasn't critically injured. But they were elderly. Their rehabilitation would be long and expensive. Diego had to pour all his startup savings into the settlement. And he lost a leg. Yeah. I've lost everything now. Diego looked at me, his eyes trembling with despair. I'm completely unworthy of you now. I set down the fruit basket and turned to leave. Behind me, Diego murmured, "Maybe this is karma." I paused, then turned back, and saw him looking at me with empty, hollow eyes. "Olivia, back when you were in the hospital. Did it hurt this much too?" I was stunned for a moment, then suddenly realized Diego wasn't just looking at me. It seemed that the car crash had finally made him see our future. "Diego, goodbye." I didn't stop walking. I just kept going forward. Diego, side story/chapter 1. That car accident wasn't because of speed. Diego was indeed driving fast. But his driving skills had always been steady. He was anxiously calling Olivia over and over, praying that she would pick up. At the same time, he thought to himself, she was really just too cruel. Diego often felt like a dog, one that came when called and was dismissed at will. Yet with just a crook of Olivia's finger, he would forget everything. How pathetic. Diego. He laughed at himself. But the next moment, a strange scene suddenly flashed before his eyes. Olivia was lying in a hospital bed, as if she were already gone, and he was kneeling at her bedside, shouting that she was a liar. "Why didn't you tell me? Why?" Olivia's mother slapped him hard across the face. Her father swung a fist at him. "Get out! Get the hell out! Don't dirty the road my daughter's soul is taking." Diego, lying on the ground, tried to crawl forward, but was kicked back. "If you had really loved her, you would have never let that pregnant woman come around again and again to provoke our daughter. You promised to treat her well for life. That's the only reason we agreed to let her marry you. If we had known what kind of heartless bastard you were, I'd rather have died than let my daughter be with you." Diego was stunned. Him? Let another woman bully Olivia? He stood there in shock, completely unaware of the red traffic light and the pedestrians crossing. A loud crash. The car crushed bones and barreled toward the guardrail by the river. Diego, side story/chapter 2. In the searing pain, Diego blacked out. Or rather, he fell into a long, long dream. In that dream, he met a girl who looked a lot like Olivia. Without any warning, Diego saw himself actively starting to date this girl, Lisa, and canceling plans with Olivia for her. At first, he was cautious. But then, he stopped caring. He watched as Olivia started to get suspicious after noticing the signs. And though guilt flickered through him, Diego strangely felt a bit of satisfaction. Look, even Olivia could feel insecure. After all, for more than a decade, Diego had never said no to her. He worshipped her humbly, begging her to love him back, always afraid of losing her, even though he knew her heart belonged to someone else. But now, things were different. Now Olivia was the one starting to fear. One time, Olivia smelled a strange perfume on him again, and found a hair that wasn't hers. She hesitated. "Diego, this." A client tried a sample perfume. We sat close at lunch. Olivia nodded and didn't ask further, because Diego had never lied to her. Diego, side story/chapter 3. Diego suddenly realized he had come to love this feeling. That girl named Lisa was nothing like Olivia. She admired him, depended on him, and most importantly, she saw him as her only pillar. The man who could do anything. Olivia began to grow anxious and insecure. But every time, she managed to convince herself otherwise. "I believe you," Olivia said with a forced smile. "You told me that no matter how far you go, the string will always stay in my hands." She gave an invisible tug, but caught nothing. And yet, Diego instinctively lowered his head, a reflex etched into his body from countless times before. When Olivia smiled, Diego found it ironic. He no longer liked lowering his head. He no longer liked the feeling of always being the one held tightly in someone else's palm, until the positions were reversed. Lisa, whose face faintly resembled Olivia's, showed up late at night in the pouring rain, holding a warm takeout box. Eyes red and teary because he had forgotten to have dinner with her. Why did you come here? I was worried about you. What if your stomach starts hurting again? I just get scared when you don't eat with me. That scene overlapped with a memory from long ago. Back then, 18-year-old Diego had braved a storm, carrying a birthday cake to give to Olivia, only to see her kissing her childhood sweetheart. When he interrupted them, the boy frowned in annoyance. 18-year-old Olivia said, "Diego, don't come looking for me again." Her anxious gaze was fixed entirely on her boyfriend, afraid he might get upset. A gaze she had never once given Diego. Looking at Lisa now, Diego saw his 18-year-old self reflected in her. He pulled the girl into his arms. "Are you cold? From now on, I'll eat with you every single day." Diego, side story/chapter 4. Diego woke up almost struggling for breath. He didn't even notice that one of his legs was broken. He was drenched in sweat, gasping for air. Fear gripped him, because he realized that what he had seen wasn't a dream. All those countless moments of self-deprecation, the silent feelings of inferiority he'd swallowed over the years, had already planted themselves deep in his heart. During the 7 years of marriage with Olivia, those seeds had taken root, grown, and finally burst out of the soil, an eruption so violent even he couldn't contain it. What was even more twisted was that Diego had seen it all ahead of time. He had stopped right at this point in time, before marrying Olivia, before the disillusionment of married life had turned her from a cherished red mole into an ordinary bloodstain. He stopped at 28, at the moment when he loved Olivia the most, when all he wanted was to make her happy. But Olivia didn't want him anymore, and still, he loved her, but could never have her. Diego, side story/chapter 5. For a long time after the surgery, Diego was deeply discouraged. Because of the car accident, he lost all his money, and the company he was preparing to launch was dead before it even started. Even though the elderly man had fully recovered, his children refused to let Diego off the hook. They treated him like a money tree. They claimed that because the old man hit his head, he still suffered from pain, and even attributed Alzheimer's symptoms to Diego, demanding he pay for nutritional expenses. Diego began drinking, from someone who never touched alcohol. He fell to passing out drunk on the streets. One time, in the bitter cold, a girl walked by. "Olivia, Olivia." Lisa frowned in disgust and snapped, "What bad luck." A drunk vagrant mistook me for someone else. Diego sobered up instantly. Lisa, a Lisa completely different from the one he once knew. It wasn't until he cleaned himself up, rented a luxury car, bought an expensive designer bag, and pursued Lisa like the successful man from his dreams, that he finally saw her smile at him again. Just as he expected, Diego thought. Lisa's love was even cheaper than his own. Once the illusion wore off, he quickly grew tired of her and suggested a breakup. "Why?" Lisa's eyes turned red. "You were my first love. I love you so much. How can you just say it's over like that?" "I'm married." Lisa froze. "So what? You don't love her anymore." "I only want your love. If you divorce her, we can still be together." The same response, exactly like the one in his dream. Diego thought. Pathetic. Just as pathetic as me. As long as we're alive, we'll always be stumbling blocks in Olivia's path to happiness. Who's to say Lisa wouldn't be just like the one in the dream, constantly provoking Olivia over and over again? Diego reached out, took the little pendant from the car mirror, and tucked it into the pocket over his heart. With one hand, he spun the steering wheel. "You said it." He smiled. "We'll be together forever. No regrets, right?" Lisa nodded. "No regrets." "Diego, what are you doing?" The car slammed into the giant support pillar beneath the overpass. The hood crushed in violently with a thunderous crash. Lisa's scream was swallowed up by the dust that filled the air.